For all your Mets here, let's go. Bring it home. Bring it home. Bring it home Make it happen. There's no stopping us now. We're gonna do it again. It's not a question of how. It's just a matter. It's just a matter. It's just a matter of when.
Hello again, everybody.
What's up, Met fans? Welcome back to Talking Mets and Rob. How is everybody doing on this Tuesday night, December 13th, right here on Mets Hot Stove Live? Hopefully everybody is doing well tonight. And we also got our talking points on the side of the screen so we can break down what we're going to talk about so you get a better idea of what topics we're going to be talking about tonight. And also, I want to make sure that because the stream and the amount of people coming into the stream and leaving questions and leaving comments and opinions, a lot of them haven't been talked about and answered, and I do want to make sure that I get to as many questions as possible. So if you look at the side of the screen where the topics are, the Q&A is going to be at the end of all the talking points. So once we talk about everything, we can also get into the questions and concerns that you guys have. And then we can make sure we can get to as many people as possible. So if you can, please leave the questions until the end. Again, you can talk amongst yourselves in the chat, of course. But about probably around, this is going to be about an hour live stream since there's really nothing going on for the most part, except for a couple of rumors here and there and all the things on the side that are possible talking points for our Mets. So around 7:30 or 6:30 or so, I'll start answering questions so we can go into the aspect of the live stream about your questions. So once again, guys, thank you for tuning in to Talking Mets at Rob, Mets Hot Stove Live. Don't forget to please hit on that like button, and we can make sure the stream gets to more people, more Mets fans that haven't found this channel as of yet. Because let's be honest, guys, you guys have been doing a great job of hitting that like button, and a lot of you lately have been sharing it on your social media pages, and I also post this on Twitter as well. So if you do follow me on Twitter, make sure that you retweet it as well, because you guys have been doing a great job of hitting the like button and sharing the stream and the videos that I post as well. The amount of views that I began after the stream has ended has been absolutely amazing, and I can't do that on my own. It's if the likes don't get up there to the close to 100 or 150, it doesn't spread out on YouTube the way it should. And you guys have been doing a great job with it. And don't think for a second I don't appreciate it. And I once again thank you guys for that. And we're gonna keep on going, everybody. So here we go with topic number one. There has been rumors going about, and I also got a quote from Carrasco himself about his name getting on the trade block and the possible rumors of him getting traded. And I'm going to tell you why it could be a bad idea and tell you why it could be a good idea and why the Mets are actually probably going to do it. It's not about the money per se. It's more of about what the guys they have that could possibly be starters in Peterson and McGill that we'll get into it a little bit. So with that said, Carrasco is on the trade block. I think a lot of us understand that. We've heard the rumors. There was always a possibility when the Mets got Senga that Carrasco was going to be a big part of that trade. The trade, it was going to be most likely be a big part of that the rotation going forward. Again, I don't think it's the worst case scenario if the Mets keep Carlos Carrasco. I don't think that's a bad thing if we do. So what could we get for him? That's something that we can get into in a second or two. But when it comes to Carlos Carrasco and why the Mets are trading him, there are two reasons. Number one is something that has to do with the money per se, but not necessarily because the Mets are cheap or anything like that. It's that if they are really focused on getting a big bat, and I know there's been rumors that the Mets are not really looking for a big bat. It's not their top priority. Listen, guys, Epler and Cohen is not going to spend over $400 million, included with the luxury tax, and not do everything they can to make this lineup a little bit better. Again, is it the bat that we necessarily probably all want in Correa? Maybe not. But there is other bats out there that are not necessarily as good as Correa, but definitely could be a good part of that. So when it comes to Carrasco and his money, he's getting $14 million. Obviously, the Mets picked up the option, $14 million for this year. Now, if the Mets do try to trade Carlos Carrasco, and let's be honest, guys, a guy at his caliber, he had a little under a 4 ERA this year. Look around the league of players that are around the Carlos Carrasco type, that are, average pitchers back at the end of the rotation starters that are getting 13, 14, 15, 16. Look at Taijuan Walker, got $17 million from the Phillies. And everybody's like, oh, Walker's definitely better than Carrasco. Well, no. If you look at the stats, not by very much at all. And yet Walker's getting more than Carrasco. Walker and Carrasco had basically about the same ERA last year. Carrasco had more wins than Taijuan Walker. I know wins is not a big stat anymore, but when you see a pitcher win more games nowadays, it means they actually went further in the game than most pitchers. And when it comes down to it, if you're gonna shed some payroll for possibly just giving a little bit more flexibility in the payroll to get the big bat that I still believe the Mets, the big reason why they are getting or going to try their best to get Carlos Correa, and we'll get into that whole aspect in a little bit. Carlos Carrasco, if he's in the rotation, nobody's going to complain about it. He's going to be a number 5 starter, or most likely be a number 5 starter, because if it was me, I would let Carrasco, Peterson, and McGill all fight for that number 5 spot, and then see what happens going forward with the bullpen, because at the end of the day, Carrasco doesn't have minor league options, right? Because he's a veteran now. He has more years in baseball, so he has the option of saying no to go down to the minors. Peterson and McGill still have options. So that's why I think the Mets are also looking to trade Carlos Carrasco, not because they don't see him as a number 5 starter. He can easily be one of the best the best 5th starter in a rotation in baseball. That's how decent he could be. So with that said, if the Mets do trade Carlos Carrasco, what could they get for him? Well, it depends. 2 aspects. Number 1, are the Mets going to pay the majority of the salary for a team to take Carrasco, and maybe you can get maybe a mid-level prospect back for Carlos Carrasco? Like, say, if the Mets pay $8 million of the $14 million to, say, I don't know, the Pirates, say, or a team that doesn't want to spend a lot of money to get some pitchers hit, but they have to fill a rotation. A team like that, the Royals, or a team that loses out on Carlos Rodon, or a team that loses out on any available starting pitcher that's still on the market and don't want to pay $16, $17 million for a guy who's just as good as Carrasco, and you pay a few $1 million more. So that's one issue. Now, if you find a team that's looking for Carlos Carrasco that might take the money, might be a team that the Mets might be in competition with when it comes to a National League pennant or a World Series situation. Like, do you want to trade him to the Yankees? Probably not. Do you want to trade him to the Braves or Phillies? Probably not. We heard the story about the Braves possibly looking to trade Max Fried, and we'll get into that later down into the live stream with the Q&A, because I already saw people talking about that. So if you're not trading to the Braves, you're not trading to the Phillies, you're not trading them to the Yankees. So what about teams like the Cardinals? What about, that has an older rotation that might want a guy like Carrasco to help with that rotation, specifically in depth as well? What about the Cubs? The Cubs been looking for pitching. There's a lot of teams that you could see them trade to that would take on the money of Carrasco and make the Mets payroll a little flexible when it comes to building up the rest of your bullpen that we'll also get into in the talking points. So that's something as well. So there's many options. If the Mets can get rid of the $14 million on their payroll, that gives them more flexibility. Even though money's not necessarily an issue, you still want to have a little bit of flexibility in payroll, especially even if you do find a way to get Correa, to have a little bit of flexibility at the trade deadline. If, God forbid, of an injury that you have to replace an injured player in the trade deadline, or you just need that one extra piece in the bullpen or possibly the rotation. You never know with injuries, or another piece in that lineup that you might need, or maybe the Mets just need that extra bench piece that can help us during the stretch run. It gives us flexibility to do that at the trade deadline. I think the big problem last year at the trade deadline was, I think the Mets payroll is what it was, and I don't think they had the flexibility to get that extra big bat to add the $14, $15, $60 million they could have added at the deadline. Now, I know money is not an issue, but sometimes when a budget's a budget and payroll flexibility is not as much as everybody might think, last year I think that was a big problem. Yeah, Brandon, let's go, Brandon. Listen. When it comes to Andy Martino, right? Andy Martino said the same thing last year about Max Scherzer, and the Mets got Max Scherzer. I don't want to hear that. And you know what? Michael Kay also said that the Yankees have no chance of signing Correa, right? I don't believe those guys one bit. And Andy Martino finds every way possible to negatively affect the Mets in his reports. When does Andy Martino come out with a report that's positive towards the Mets? Never, right? Even with the DeGrom situation, he put the Mets in a bad light with the DeGrom situation. And he only broke the Senga news was because every other reporter fell asleep at night, and he was the only one trying to probably find any information, and he broke that. And there's no doubt about that. Martino, when he says there's no chance the Mets sign Correa, that means there's probably a better chance than most of us even think. Again, I'm not saying it's 70-30 that the Mets are going to land Correa or even be really, really serious about him. But, and we'll get into that in a second, but I just saw the comment really quickly. But I have SNY, I have Baseball Night in New York on right now. Obviously, it's on low because of the fact that I'm talking to you guys, and it will affect the microphone. But just think of it. If the Mets trade Carrasco and they find a suitor to take on his money, that means the Mets have $14 million more flexibility in their payroll, and the money that they still have might be able to spend, right? Because even if the Mets don't go after Correa, there's still a possibility they still need a big bat. Now, if that's a guy like Brandon Drury or I think somebody brought up the other day, give me a second, guys. Adam Duvall or Trey Mancini, JD Martinez. These guys are not going to be $5 million players. It's going to cost you about $10 million, at least a 1 year, $10 million deal. So that's something that you can, it might be a subtraction by addition, right? You get rid of one player at $14 million to get a $10 million player. And let's be honest, do we necessarily need Carlos Carrasco, or do we need some type of bat? And I'm not talking about just the power bat. I think people are trying to focus just on the power bat. Remember, guys, Correa is not a power bat. So it's not like we're getting somebody that we're signing that's a 35 home run guy, right? We're not getting that guy. He's a 20 to 25 home run guy. He's basically what Lindor can do in regards to home runs. But what we do need is run producers. That's why I want Correa. And that's the other reason why if we don't get Correa, we need to look at guys that are run producers. Somebody that can get up in the middle of the lineup with people on base and drive in runs. JD Martinez can do that. Trey Mancini can do that. Adam Duvall can do that. Brandon Drury can do that. Carlos Correa can do that. Now, Correa is a whole nother dimension that we have to look at when it comes to that. That's why Carlos Carrasco trade, I think, is very, very much in play to watch for over the next couple of days. And what Carlos Carrasco said in a, I guess a reporter asked him about the trade rumors. He said this: I think the only thing that I can control with the way it stands right now is just getting ready for spring training, and we'll see what happens. That makes me believe that Carlos Carrasco really does believe he's going to get traded. That doesn't sound like somebody who is confident he's going to be a Met in 2023. So with Carlos Correa and with Carlos Carrasco, with Carlos Carrasco and the possibility of him getting traded, I think is a big aspect of flexibility in payroll where the Mets can make other things happen a lot easier than worrying about, all right, if we get this guy, we can't get this guy. That's why when I said about the Brandon Nimmo situation and why Brandon Nimmo's absurdly overpaid contract could be an issue is the fact that will the Mets still continue to help their lineup with the amount of money that they just spent on Nimmo? Let's be honest, guys. What money have they spent on the lineup? Basically nothing except for Nimmo. And that's just only making the lineup exactly the same. Not saying that Nimmo can't be better than he was last year. I don't think he can be, but he is in his prime. Can he get better? Yeah, I'm not going to doubt Brandon Nimmo as hard as he works. But if this whole big overpriced contract that we gave Brandon Nimmo prevents us from getting anybody else in the lineup. Now, if the Mets don't go after, the middle tier bats that are available, like I said before, Duvall, Trey Mancini, Drury, JD Martinez, those type of guys, then is the money that we spent on the starting pitching and the bullpen, because obviously Diaz is coming back. He just signed a big contract as well. The Mets can easily spend $150 million in total in their bullpen and nearly over $150 million in their rotation. They spent $300 million just on their bullpen and their rotation when all said and done. When they finish up there with their bullpen, it's going to average around $300 million in the rotation and the bullpen, and we spent $162 million on just Brandon Nimmo. That's not enough to make. Now, again, can the shift make a lot of difference in this team producing more runs? Absolutely. The ban of the shift? Absolutely. Could there be more stolen bases? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, you have to look at the fact that if the Mets don't make any more changes in this lineup and they're going to go internal with the DH, they're really going to put a lot of pressure on Alvarez and Beatty to be a big productive part of this lineup, then I think it's too much of a risk to count on them than to not actually get a big bat. Because if they don't work out, what is your plan B? Go through the entire first half and then wait to the trade deadline and then make something happen? I don't like that whole aspect. I like to go into the season having a full roster where you can say, all right, I know this team can do some good things here. Then if you need extra help, the trade deadline can be a possibility. Just like last year, where the Mets were in prime situation of first place and everything else they needed to do something like that. And they didn't do enough at the deadline, right? And that was the same thing. And I expect a little bit more from the Mets. That's just me. And again, Adam Duvall, Brandon Drury can be 25 home run guys, but you have to play these guys every day. That's the issue that the Mets are going to have. They don't have a lot of spots in their lineup that you can play these guys every day. You're not putting Adam Duvall in left field every day over Mark Cannon. You're going to probably platoon him. You're going to DH him. Well, that takes at-bats away from Alvarez. That takes at-bat away from Canna. And it's not like Duvall and Canna are much different players. Offensively, they could probably provide almost the same thing offensively, except Duvall would have more power. That's the issue that I'm having. And even the DH, even if you want to go with the young guns in Beatty and Alvarez, you're taking that back away from these guys with Escobar and whoever you get with another bat as either a DH guy. So you're taking at-bats away from these guys. And that's the issue. Again, Evil, the problem with Brian Reynolds is that he's going to cost a ton. And not even only with that, you got to give away multiple prospects that you can probably use for bigger players than Brian Reynolds. And again, there's a reason why Brian Reynolds hasn't been traded yet, because the Pirates are asking for the moon and the sun from many teams. And that's the issue that a lot of teams are probably having. So, again, that is the whole aspect with Carlos Carrasco. I think Carlos Carrasco trade is a situation where you have to watch, because I think that's going to make other things happen when it comes to the Mets, and possibly using that money for maybe bolstering the bullpen a little bit more, maybe even bringing another big bat who can be a fourth, another guy on the bench, like Adam Duvall, because let's be honest, guys, even though Alonso plays 150 games, he does DH too. So who are you putting at first base? So a JD Martinez, Trey Mancini could be an option as a bench piece for a guy who, when Alonso DHs, who can play first base as well. And also, let's be honest, we also need a fourth outfielder as well. So that's something that you can look at as well. All right, so next up is the bullpen options for the Mets. I think we've well known the guy that we've been talking about for almost a year now, year and a half, and that was Andrew Chafin, probably 2 years. Last offseason, it was a big deal. Well, Ken, yeah, I'm talking about 150 games at first base. Yes, he's going to play almost every game, but I'm talking about at first base, he'll probably play about 145 to 150 games, because Pete Alonso DH'd about 15 times last year. So he didn't play first base about 15 times last year. So you need a guy that can actually be capable at first base. And that's why JD Martinez and Trey Mancini could be possible options for the Mets, not even just as a DH spot, but also a backup first baseman as well. So with the bullpen, we talked about Andrew Chafin since last offseason, that the Mets made a stupid decision not to sign him, and then decided to basically go with one lefty. Well, technically two, in Shreve and Rodriguez, but that was a disaster, because not even at the trade deadline that Shreve even lasted on the Mets, he got DFA'd. And Joel A. Rodriguez, even though he had moments that were good, he gave up a ton of home runs and a ton of big spot RBI base hits to left-handers. And that's the only reason why he was a part of the Mets, because the Mets needed a left-hander. They can't make that mistake again, right? They got that lefty from the Rays that they traded for. Nice move, solid lefty specialist. That I like that, but you need another lefty. A guy like Chafin, especially with the 3-batter rule, he can get out. Obviously, he can get out lefties, but he can also get out righties, and that's a big deal. If you look at his splits, the right-handed batters are hitting around 220, 225, which is not really good. And then lefties are hitting a little bit over 100. So that's why the Mets should be all in on Andrew Chafin. And, of course, if you bring back Adam Ottavino, I think our bullpen is very solid and probably better than last year. And that's where the Mets have to look. I know there's trades. There's a trade option for Alexis Diaz, Edwin Diaz's brother from the Reds. That's going to take a lot to get him, since he's under team control. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen, but that could be an option. Again, a long shot, but an option. Alex Reyes, the former reliever starter/reliever for the Cardinals, who is a free agent, has a lot of injuries, but has an electric arm. Could the Mets take a chance on him? Possibly. Yes, Andre Taylor Rogers as well. I don't think he might be a free agent. I'm not 100% sure on that. I think he get traded in that deal with a hater. So that could be a trade option. But again, when it comes to free agency with the options, Chafin and Ottavino, I think, are the two main guys the Mets need to focus on. Because if you do get Chafin and Ottavino, I mean, to set them up with Robertson and with Diaz and with Rayleigh, who is the lefty from the Rays, and a couple of guys, the pitcher we got from the Rule 5 draft, the reliever that the Yankees DFA that the Mets got. That's a very decent rotation bullpen that necessarily I don't think that is going to be, it could be actually better. Again, bullpens are a crapshoot. The best bullpen in baseball last year could be one of the worst this year. So I don't like just going by names and saying, oh, that's a great bullpen. You don't know until they start pitching. Because once again, we've seen pitchers who have a great year have a terrible year the following year and vice versa. So that's something that we have to look at. So look for Chafin, Ottavino. Those two guys are very interesting options. And I think is somebody that the Mets should be focusing on in their bullpen. Again, maybe they have to pivot, but they should never pivot on Andrew Chafin. They need to get him. There is no doubt about the Mets need to get him. And we're going to go back once again to the topic of Correa. Is it likely? Probably not. But for anybody who thinks the Mets are not in it, you are just either not paying attention or not understanding the fact that Correa, day by day, are losing teams that could be available in him, right? We've seen the whole thing with the Giants with Aaron Judge. We saw the same thing with right now with Rodon to the Giants that basically evaporated over the last 2 days. You know, they just signed Stripling. They signed Sean Manaea. So they got 6 starters right now. Unless they're going to trade 1 or 2 of them, which I doubt, they're basically out of Rodon. That's the same thing as what happened to Correa. You heard about the Orioles. I don't know what the hell the Orioles are doing. They're just sitting around basically not doing nothing. Right? They were supposed to be heavily in on pitching in the free agent market. They got nobody. We heard them about Bassett. They were supposed to be in on DeGrom. They were supposed to be in on Chris Bassett. They were supposed to be in a ton of these guys, and they got none. And it comes back to the situation of, does Correa want to go to the Giants? Because last time I checked, the Giants are not a good team. And is he going to go with a team with the Giants who he has to face the Braves? The Padres and the Dodgers. And the way the team looked last year, they looked old, position player wise. That's a huge problem. And I don't think it makes much sense at all. Yeah, well, Bachi, when it comes to the Cubs and Correa, that's the same thing I heard with the Giants as well, right? Last week, we heard the Giants were the favorites, right? Right after Judge signed with the Yankees, we heard that, oh, there's no way the Giants are going to let Correa get away. Well, that kind of simmered down a little bit as well. The Cubs, I don't know what they're doing either. They're another team that makes no sense, right? They were supposed to be all in on one of the shortstops. They're having a hard time. We all thought that Swanson was going to be basically a slam dunk for the Cubs at this point because his wife plays for a soccer team in Chicago. It made the most sense. And then look what happened. It all fell apart. And that's the whole issue that I don't understand with the Cubs either. It seems like the Cubs doesn't want to dish out enough money for these shortstops. You know, I think a lot of teams got scared off by the market all over baseball or free agency because the money has been absolutely insane. Everybody's getting overpaid. Even the best players on the market are getting overpaid. And I think it scared off some teams, including the Cubs. Now, the Giants were willing to give $360 million to Judge. Could they pivot to Correa or Swanson? Absolutely. But only recently, if you were checking Twitter, now the Giants are heavily involved with Swanson. So that tells me one thing. Number one, Correa's contract value and marketplace is extremely higher than they thought. And obviously, Swanson is going to be less than Correa. So if the Giants are pivoting to Swanson now, does that mean that you get a desperate team like the Cubs that is like, all right, we have to get Correa now? But do they really want to spend that money on just shortstop? I don't know. But it just tells me that if the Giants are not willing to give $300 million to Correa, but we're willing to give it for Judge, so that means they don't want to spend that much money anymore. And Swanson is probably a $200 million man, right? He was projected to get between 160 and 200 or 160 and 180. Now we can get somewhat north of 200. If you get $100 million less to get Swanson over Correa, I really like Swanson. I think Swanson was one of the leaders, one of the linchpins, one of the pain of the asses of the NL East with the Braves. That's something that a team can definitely use. Swanson's a very good player. Again, he'll be a leadoff hitter right away, which is good for most teams. And I also think that at the same time, you have to look at the fact that teams are going by the wayside who could possibly in on Correa, right? Last week, you heard the Cubs, you heard the Yankees, right? You heard those teams. All of a sudden, it seems like they're slowly losing out or losing out of favor of getting Correa. And now all of a sudden, new teams pop up. You heard the Orioles, someone interested. The Dodgers, I don't know what the hell they're doing. They seem like they don't want anybody, even though you always got to watch out for the Dodgers because of the fact that they are the Dodgers. They seem like they always make a big splash. I mean, their payroll, they're like lower than, I think they're 10th right now on payroll, right? They're in under $200 million now. So they can add a $30 million player without an issue. Again, maybe at this point, the Dodgers owners and GMs and everything like that are looking at the fact that, yeah, they won in 2020 in the pandemic year, but they spent a ton of money and it only got them one world championship. Maybe they are looking to go a different route. Maybe they're looking to go more pitching focused and go with the lineup they currently have. And, you know, they do have that young third baseman that is going to replace Turner. I forgot his name, but he's supposed to be a very good prospect for them. So that's something that you have to look at as well. And so I'm going to get to everybody's questions after the last segment, which is the lineup, the opinions of the lineup. And we talked about Carrasco that could possibly affect the situation of what the Mets do and bringing in another bench piece or a possible bench player for that's a first baseman and could be a DH platoon, something like that. Bachi, thank you, buddy. So that's something that you have to look at as well, right? So with the lineup, you look at the lineup today, and depending on what you want to do at DH, if you're going to give Alvarez the opportunity, again, we don't know. Alvarez can go into spring training and struggle offensively, which is the reason why we're talking about him as the possible DH/catcher combo and why everybody wants to trade James McCann. If Alvarez struggles in spring training offensively, you cannot bring him up north. You just can't do that. You can't throw him in the lineup and put him in the middle of the lineup and he hurts the middle of the lineup. You can't have that. So if you're looking at it, say if Vogelback is the guy at DH at the moment, or say if, before we get into the DH, Beatty or Escobar, say if Beatty is performing extremely well offensively, looks good at third base, now you could put Escobar at DH. I know we were talking about this last stream, that Escobar could be the DH option. You don't have to worry about a platoon because he can hit lefty and he can hit righty, right? He's a switch hitter. And if Beatty performs well at third, well, now you got your young third baseman of the future, and now you just solidified your DH spot. Hopefully Escobar has a better year early on, unlike he did last year. And that's the most important thing we have to look at when it comes to the lineup. Again, I think everybody's okay with Nimmo in the leadoff spot. I don't think offensively you're going to have an issue with him. Batting second, Marte. We all love Marte. Lindor, Alonso. The top four is absolutely pretty damn good. I don't think anybody's going to complain about that. Now, when you get to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, now, depending on what you're going to do at the DH spot, is Escobar going to be a number 5? Is McNeil going to be a number 5? I think you need a little bit more pop behind Alonso, somebody that can actually scare you with the bat. Even though McNeil is well over a 300 hitter, he is not that power bat people are scared of. And once again, we talked about this. If you're not going to have the people on base in front of your power bats, then you need somebody that can hit a ball over the wall to get some runs on the board. And the problem with McNeil right now that you brought back Nimmo, is that you're not bringing McNeil up in the order, because your 1, 2, 3, 4 is basically set with Nimmo, Marte, Lindor, and Alonso. So now you're looking at McNeil probably batting 6th. And now, your DH, now Canada's going to be batting 7th. And who else is around? Let's see, what am I missing here? Second base, first base, catcher. It really depends. You know what I'm saying? So, this is where you come in. Now, if I'm the Mets, I put McNeil 9th. I think you can have that double leadoff guy with McNeil and Nimmo. I think that's a pretty good 9-1 situation here. I don't know why the Mets didn't do that more often. But you're going to be batting McNeil 6th. And even though McNeil said he liked batting a little later in the order, McNeil is not a person that you want in the 6th or 7th spot, because those guys in front of him in your 5-6 spot are most likely not going to be on base for him. And that's a problem for a guy that bats over 300. But the interesting thing is the lineup is going to be interesting, because if Alvarez does not offensively perform in spring training, you can't bring him up at the big league level and just throw him out there as the DH and catch him twice a week. You can't do that. Not only are you going to kill his confidence, you're not going to make him work on the things that he needs to work on, which is make sure he works with his bats a little bit more at the plate, and also catching. And now with Escobar, you got options with Escobar. Escobar's another year older. You don't want to keep him at third base another year older, because he's not fleet of foot anymore. He made a couple of errors at third base last year. Even though he's somewhat good at third base, he made some bad errors last year that cost the Mets some games. And that's something that, if you got a younger guy that can do it better, even though I don't know if Beatty's going to be a really great third baseman, because all signs is that he's not a great third baseman, but he's a good third baseman. Again, if he can make the basic plays, the easy plays, and occasional, web gem, then I'm okay with that. But Beatty needs to be I think Beatty can be an easily 275, 280 hitter and hit 20 home runs. I think he's that type of player. So it's a lot to look at, because the lineup right now, if it comes up going up north with this lineup, we have no idea if Alvarez is going to be the player we think he is, at least at this moment during spring training. So I think it might be better off possibly leaving Alvarez in the minors just to work on his catching game, just make sure he gets his at-bats, put Beatty at third, let Escobar be a DH, and let Vogelback and, God forbid, Ruff come up in spots later in the game if you need it. Other than that, I think it'll work out better that way if Beatty plays third base and Escobar is the DH, because the platoon is a waste of time with two different players. At least with Escobar, if he's hot, it doesn't matter which side of the plate you're going to put him on, because he's a switch hitter. And that works either way when it comes to a platoon. So that is our topics for today, and we're going to leave the last 20 minutes or so for questions. I know there was a Brave fan, JL. I know you're cool with me the whole time during the season and stuff like that. I know you're a Brave fan. I know you talked about Sean Murphy. I brought this up. Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at this earlier about the trade, and what makes me very weird about this stuff is the fact that the Braves never had the best offer on the table for Sean Murphy. The St. Louis Cardinals did for Sean Murphy, and that was the whole reason why they pivot and paid Wilson Contreras. And before I get into the Sean Murphy opinion, I wanted to say this. So according to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, which is a newspaper in St. Louis, they said this, that the St. Louis Cardinals gave a better offer or better options to the Athletics than the Braves did. There was the Cardinals said you could take any of the two prospects out of this bunch of players. Lars Nootbaar, Brandon Donovan, Gordon Graceffo. These are the top prospects in I'm sorry. Excuse me. That was my fault. I read the wrong thing. So the Athletics were offered two of these prospects from the Cardinals system: Carlson, Gorman, Burleson, and Yepes. Any two of those four. Apparently, the Athletics, for some reason, didn't want to take any of those two players, yet they took, in the top 100 of Major League Baseball prospects, any of these four were better prospects than what the Braves gave up for Sean Murphy. Again, a lot of the new top prospects list haven't been out on all teams yet, so we're going on basically last year. There was like one or two of them that were close to the Cardinals' top prospects that they have in this list, and the Cardinals had a better offer on the table than the Braves. And this also included the Brewers as well in this 3-trade deal. It's just that the Braves and the Brewers, or at least the Braves, decided to go with the Braves. The Athletics chose the Braves prospects over the Cardinals for whatever reason. And let's be honest, it's not like the A's has been picking good prospects for the players they traded over the last couple of years. So they've been doing a terrible job with that. So again, I don't think this move was necessary for the Braves when you had Wilson Contreras and Travis d'Arnaud that have been perfectly fine with you guys over the last couple of years. You guys been perfectly fine at catcher. But I'm a little shocked because I think the Wilson Contreras leaving the Braves was weird because he was a big part of the Braves the last couple of years, the World Series year, and even last year as well. He's a pain in the ass for the Mets for sure, and it was for a lot of teams as well. I don't think it was a necessary move, but once again, the Braves make a trade that gets a player who is in his prime, who is a very good player, who is cheap. And I wouldn't be surprised in the next couple of weeks, you're going to see Sean Murphy get an offer from the Braves for a long-term deal. That's just the way the Braves do it. They did it with Olsen. They're probably going to do it with Sean Murphy. You know, d'Arnaud's getting older. You know, Wilson Contreras, we all thought that Wilson Contreras was going to be a bigger part of the catching platoon with Travis d'Arnaud, where Contreras was going to catch more than Travis d'Arnaud because d'Arnaud's getting old. Let's be honest. He's still very good with the bat. And, you know, you can catch d'Arnaud twice a week and let Contreras catch. Again, defensively, Contreras is not great, but he provides a good enough glove where you want his bat in the lineup. So, you know, Contreras goes to the Brewers. Sean Murphy comes to the Braves. Again, do I think the bat necessarily is better than the bat they're losing from Dansby Swanson? I can call that kind of, you can probably call that somewhat even though I think Swanson is a big part of that Braves lineup that was very deadly. And again, Sean Murphy, you know, his bat percentage on, you know, he puts the baseball in play. That is something that the Braves had a problem with. They struck out a ton. They didn't put a lot of the balls in play. They hit a lot of home runs, right? That was the whole thing with the Braves. That's why they basically beat the Mets in that series, because they hit home runs. They didn't get a lot of people on base, but they hit a lot of home runs. And they got a guy in Murphy that strikes out less than Swanson, puts the bat on the ball more than Swanson, and I think overall is a better hitter. Again, you know, we talked about this last year when it came to Freddie Freeman leaving the Braves about leadership. You're losing another chemistry type guy in Swanson that I think is something not to look over. And Brave fans looked over Freeman last year, and I think it hurt you guys in the playoffs. I'm not going to lie with you. You know, even though the matchup wasn't favorable against the Phillies, because we talked about this all year, that the Phillies matched up well against the Braves, there's a leadership aspect in the playoffs that matter. You saw how Bryce Harper took over that leadership role of the Phillies, and it was a big reason why that team went as far as they did. You saw with the Astros. I know a lot of people don't like the Astros, but let's be honest. The Astros have leaders on that team. Bregman, Altuve. Nobody likes Altuve anymore, but he's a big leader on that Astros team. Even though if you don't perform, you still bring that chemistry onto the Braves, onto the team. That is a big deal when it comes to the playoffs, and it's a big deal. Swanson and Freeman were very liked on those Braves teams, were leaders on that team. Now you're going into a situation where are your leaders on the Braves team? Is it Acuna? Acuna is never going to be a leader. He's too about himself to be a leader. Albies can be that leader. I like Albies a lot. Olsen's not going to be a leader. He's just on this team. I don't think he can be a leader. You know, who is a leader? Can it be Riley? Possibly. You know, but Swanson was a leader as well. He was that leadoff guy that set that spark in the beginning of a game or in rallies in big innings. That's something that you're going to lose. And I know you might get Grissom, and there's a possibility to get a veteran shortstop as well. But again, these are the same things that I talked about with Freddie Freeman with the Braves last year. Now you just lost two core players that will help you win a World Series in 2021 that are off your team. Don't think that's not a big deal. And if Brave fans want to make it act like it's not a big deal, it was a big deal last year of you losing Freddie Freeman. I don't care about the numbers, about who had better numbers, Olsen or Freeman. Well, of course, Olsen had better numbers overall, but again, where was Olsen in that Philadelphia series? Where was that leadership that they needed? Because the Braves, on paper, are better than the Phillies. There's no doubt about that. But guess what? When you don't have that leadership, that chemistry, that somebody says, hey, guys, we can't let this happen. That's just Freddie Freeman. That's Dansby Swanson. Those are two guys that were big-time leaders in that clubhouse. You don't have to be a Brave fans to realize that. Those were the linchpins. Those were the leaders of your team. Because I can tell you right now, Acuna is never going to be that guy. Can Albies be? Maybe. But you know what? When you can't, he had unfortunate injuries, Albies, and Albies one of my favorite players. But if you're not on the field, you can't be a leader, right? Can Riley be that leader? Yeah, I guess. But it didn't work out last year. And again, you're losing two key components, two core players that I can guarantee you in 2021, there was no way in hell a Brave fans would have said that the Braves would not have Swanson and Freeman after 2022 season. They would have left in your face. Don't think that's not a big deal. I don't care who you replace them with. Numbers wise, leadership is a problem. We talked about it with the Mets in 2021 where the chemistry was just off. They didn't click together. The Braves clicked in 2021. 2022, yeah, they played extremely well in the second half. Absolutely. And basically since June 1st. But at the same time, something happened. When things started, because remember, the Braves didn't have really anything go wrong from June 1st on, right? But as soon as they got punched in the face against the Phillies, everything changed. They couldn't get back up. The same way the Braves punched the Mets in the mouth in that last 3-game series, the Mets couldn't recover, right? The Mets, I think, had the leaders, but their leaders didn't perform, and that shit hurt. That hurt their chances. And now we're going back to the NL East as a whole. I can guarantee you're going to get Brave fans saying, oh, the Braves are not losing the division. You're going to get Met fans saying the Mets are the best in the division. You're going to get Philly fans that talk about the World Series last year are going to say they're going to win the division. Well, guess what? There's a pretty good chance that with the balanced schedule this year, that all three of us will probably be in the playoffs again, because it's not like the last couple of years when you play the teams 19 times in your division, where it's pretty hard to see 3 90-plus win teams in your division, because that's hard to do. But with the balanced schedule, we're playing each other less now. Possibility that each one of us can have 90-plus wins. And that is a pretty good chance of us making the playoffs yet again. I think most of us believe that all three of us are going to make the playoffs. Again, we've seen it last year. It didn't matter if the Braves or the Mets won the division last year. It came down to who was hot at the right time. The Phillies were scorching hot at the right time. And it showed in the playoffs. And it looks like, the Braves, that's probably their big move with Sean Murphy right there, which is a solid move. Again, I don't necessarily how much better he's going to be offensively with Wilson Contreras and Travis d'Arnaud. I don't think it's going to, make it your offense extremely better. Maybe contact rate, less strikeouts in your lineup could help. But offensively, you are losing a bat that was a big contributor to the Braves and Contreras, and also you're losing Swanson. So you're replacing Murphy with Contreras. You're replacing Contreras and Swanson with Murphy. And who knows how that's going to turn out? The Murphy's going to the American League, to the National League. Could be different. There's a little bit more pressure on him now, right? He's on a good team where the eyes are on him. He's facing a ton of better pitching in the NL East that he did in the AL West. So that's a big difference as well. So that's something that we can look at as well. So with everything said, the rosters are still not set for any of these teams. Again, I still think there's a huge problem in the Phillies bullpen. I don't care if they have Murderer's Row in that lineup. If you can't pitch at the end of games and you blow leads with your bullpen, you're not winning as much as you think you are during a 162-game season. You might be getting away with it in short series like they did in the playoffs. Like, remember, guys, we keep on talking about this. The Phillies bullpen was basically the same bullpen they had when they were so terrible in the first half. And they pitched a little bit better in the playoffs in short series. Well, why do we just assume that their bullpen is going to be good because they look better in the playoffs? But in a stretch of 162 games, they weren't that good. And they still haven't fixed their bullpen. So the Phillies can score 8 runs, but they're going to lose 8-7, right? And they're starting pitching. And again, I said this from the beginning with Taijuan Walker. Taijuan Walker fits the Mets better than Walker does with the Phillies. Number one, Walker gives up a ton of home runs, even when he's pitching very well. Even if you watch him with the Mets, as much as we did, he gave up a lot of one-in-track power hits or outs that were one-in-track power that would be easily out at Citizens Bank Park 5-10 rows back. Easily. He's going to give a lot. He pitched you a 4 ERA in half his games. He pitched in a big ballpark in Citi Field. And he had nearly a 4 ERA. I can assure you right now, he's going to have at least a 4 ERA at Citizens Bank Park as a Philly. Not saying he's not going to have great outings. He will. He'll throw a 7-inning gem 3 times in a row, and then his next 4 starts, he can't get out of the 4th inning. That's what Walker is. The Phillies just look at him beating down the Phillies throughout the last couple of years, but don't actually look at the longevity of every start with Walker. The Mets fans watch it. The Philly, it's just like, the Mets fans looking at a guy that we don't see all the time and see his highlights and look, wow, this guy's good. But when you watch him every day, you know exactly what you're getting. And that's what we know what we're getting from Walker. That's why I think Walker would have fit better with the Mets than the Phillies, but he's a Philly now, and he's basically going to be their number 3 when in the Mets rotation, he was a number 4. So the Phillies are counting on Walker a hell of a lot more than the Mets were counting on Walker the last couple of years. That's the difference with the Phillies. When it comes to the Braves, we know their lineup is very good. That's not an issue. The Braves might be looking to trade Max Fried, their ace of the staff. Now, could they get a lot with that? Yeah, possibly. But why are they trading him? Do they not trust him? Teams have to look at that when they want to trade for him. Why do they want to trade Max Fried, who's the ace of their staff? There's no guarantee that Soroka is going to be healthy yet again. Are they going to trust Strider to be the ace of their staff? I don't know. So they got question marks in their rotation as well. And if the Braves are counting on Soroka, that's a problem, because if Soroka can't stay healthy or can't get back on that field, then the Braves are in real trouble in the starting rotation. So as much as you think that the Braves offense can do a lot of damage, they can. But they're in a similar situation where they can score a ton of runs, but they can give up a lot of runs in a rotation as well. Now, we're going to get to the Mets. The Mets have problems. The Mets are bringing back the same lineup at the moment than last year. They were top 5 in scoring most of the year until the last 2 months of the season. So that's something that the Mets still have to worry about. Again, maybe with the shift, maybe with the banning of the shift, the possibility of more stolen bases with the new pitching rule where they can't throw over so many times, could that affect the Mets run scoring a little bit better? Possibly, but there's no guarantee of that, right? We'll see. The Mets bullpen, it's not finished yet. I think they're probably going to go after Stroman. Sorry, I was just reading the chat. Chafin and Ottavino. If they do that, there is no reason why the bullpen can't be better. Now they got solid guys in that bullpen that we actually have a bridge to Edwin Diaz now, which we lacked parts of last year that I think hurt us in certain series during the year, even in the beginning of the year, the first half, and even the second half, where Diaz barely pitched in September. And the big reason was we could not get to Diaz with a lead. And if that was bullpen issues, was that not scoring runs, it was a major issue combined for not getting Edwin Diaz the ball with a lead in the 9th inning. That's a problem. Starting rotation, I'm not going to say that it's going to be as good or better than last year, because that's not fair to how good that rotation was last year, even without DeGrom for a half a season and Scherzer out for 6-7 weeks. Now, you do get a Cy Young guy that is replacing DeGrom. If Verlander is healthy, he's going to pitch very well. It's not saying Cy Young well, but even if he pitches to a 2.70 ERA, it's pretty damn good. And Chris Bassett and Quintana, if you look at their stats last year, Quintana had a better year, but we know how good Bassett was for the majority of the year, except for the last two games. The most two important games of the season for the Mets was the Padres and the Braves, and he was a complete disaster. So Ken Quintana, he's a veteran. He pitches a lot of innings. He pitches every fifth day. You don't have to worry about him. He gives you depth. Senga is a question mark. Nobody can say. Now, if you want to put Walker and Senga on the same level as a pitching platform, since Senga is very much an unknown, yes, has better stuff than Walker, but we don't know how it's going to translate to the major leagues every fifth day when he pitched once a week in Japan. And he's going to pitch more innings in Major League Baseball. I think the most he pitched was 150 innings. He's going to blow past that if he's going to be the Mets' number 3 starter. And if I'm the Mets, I put Senga as our number 4 starter. And the reason why I say that is because the number 3 starter should be the guy that pitches a ton of innings, like Bassett did last year. I mean, Bassett pitched the most innings past the 7th inning in the Mets rotation. Quintana could be that guy. He's a workhorse. He can pitch you 180 to 190 innings with no issues at all. Senga should be the 4th starter only because to get him acclimated to Major League Baseball. You don't want to throw him out there and let him throw 7 innings right away or in the first couple of months. You got to watch his innings. You can't just throw him out there because he got great stuff and just let him pitch. Because if he never pitched more than 150 innings, you're going to get the situation like Nestor Cortez last year, or most pitchers who never pitched more innings in their career than they did. And you see the problem that they had. Nestor Cortez basically broke down. He was hurt in the playoffs. The same thing with Taijuan Walker in 2021. He broke down in the second half because he never pitched that many innings in his career, and he was coming off injury. The same thing with Senga. Got to be careful with him. Yes, he has ace-type stuff, but you don't want to throw him out there to the Wolves and expect him to throw 180 innings with no complications or no issues. 1, you don't want to get him hurt. Number 2, you don't want to expose him to those type of innings if you don't need to. The reason why, your bullpen should be better. If you got to take Senga out in the 5th inning the first 2 months of the year, you do that to protect his arm, to protect your asset. You don't want to mess that up because in a year's time or 2 years' time, he could possibly be acclimated into Major League Baseball with his great stuff, and he could be your 1 or number 2 in the future. You don't want to mess that up. And that's the most important thing. So that's what we're looking at there. Let me just go over the questions if there is any. Let me just check. Let's check. Let's see. I see people talking about Conforto again. You know, will Conforto be an option as a 4th outfielder? Again, he's not going to get paid like a 4th outfielder. Cody Bellinger got $17 million for 1 year. Would it be shocked if Conforto gets 1 year $15 million, 1 year $60 million, even though he didn't play last year? Because he is a guy. Let's be honest, guys. In the majority of his career, is a 20-plus home run guy. And I still think 2021 was an anomaly. I don't think Conforto is that bad of a player because he's not. Again, I wouldn't mind giving Conforto a chance because let's be honest, if he's the same guy that he was in 2019 and hits the way we think he can hit, he's a better fielder, defensive player than Mark Canha. Why wouldn't you put Michael Conforto in left field? If he still has the bat that we all think he might have. It's a possibility, you know, never doubt other options. Because let's be honest, if you're going to take JD Martinez, Trey Mancini, Duvall, I'd probably take Michael Conforto, to be honest with you. But Conforto is definitely an option. Ken, no. Taijuan Walker. I checked this out the other day. I'm gonna tell you right now. I don't believe I was wrong, but I think I saw what it was. Oh, you're right. 3.49 ERA. All right. So he had a 3.49 ERA, right? Quintana, if you want to mix him in with Quintana as right, he wasn't the number 3. So your number 4 starter is either Quintana or Senga. Still, right? Quintana had a better year than Walker. And you know what Quintana did that Walker didn't do? He didn't break down at the end of the year like Walker did. Walker had a better year this year. Absolutely. But I think we can agree. Yeah, well, it is a half a run. I mean, it's a lot. I get you that. But again, I think you can agree, Ken, that he fits better in a Mets rotation in a bigger ballpark than he does at Citizens Bank Park. I mean, we talked about this many times. He gave up a lot of home runs and a lot of balls that got to the warning track that were caught that would be out of Citizens Bank Park. So that half a run can go by the wayside easily. And even Walker last year broke down at the end of the year a little bit. He pitched well, better than 2021, but he still got tired and had his moments. And again, if you look at just the pure stats, Quintana had a better year than Walker. And with a lefty at Citi Field is probably even better. Quintana, I think, gave up 1 home run last year, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's how many home runs he gave up. And he pitched 32 starts. Let me just check really quick. I think that's what I saw. Let's see. Let me just check really quick. Wrong one. Checking Baseball Reference. Well, yeah, Ken, Walker is better in a ballpark that is big, that he pitches half the time, if not more. That's the problem that I'm having. Again, that half a run could mean the difference between the Phillies winning 1 or 2 games more or losing 1 or 2 games more. All right, so Quintana was 6-7, but he was on a bad team with the Pirates for a while until he got traded with the Cardinals, and he had a 2.93 ERA. Okay, so a half a run better than Walker, and he pitched in how many games? 32 games. He gave up 1 home run. I'm sorry. Hold on. Let me check. Home runs. He gave up 8 home runs in 32 starts. And Taijuan Walker, how many home runs did he give up? And remember, Quintana pitched in a pretty small ballpark. PNC Ballpark is a hitter's park. And let's see. 29 starts for Walker. He gave up 15 home runs, so almost doubled the amount. 15 home runs, so he doubled the amount of home runs in 3 less starts. So, and that is pitching in a bigger ballpark. So, I'm predicting that Walker's going to give up at least 20 home runs at Citizens Bank Park, or at least as a Philly, based on that. Let's see, 45 walks for Walker. All right, let's see what Quintana here. Let's see. All right, walks. Six 47 walks so around the same thing as Walker. Again, Walker and Quintana, they're strike throwers for the most part. Their walks are pretty good. 165 innings for Quintana. So again, you can pick. I think Walker fits well. And just think, he pitched in St. Louis and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh for most of the, if you really think about it, Quintana pitched in a PNC ballpark that is a hitter-friendly ballpark. St. Louis is an average ballpark, but he gave up 8 home runs. He gave up 7 home runs less than Walker in 3 more starts as well. So again, Walker's 3.49 ERA is probably going to balloon a little bit. Well, yeah, Ken, but how many times did Walker give up home? But see, that's the whole point, though. He gives up home runs in a ballpark that is very pitcher friendly. Now he's going to again. I wouldn't mind the Mets keeping Walker. I think Walker suits the Mets better than the Phillies. That's the whole conversation. I'm not trying to say who's better because I think Jose Quintana is going to be perfectly fine, especially in a lefty in a ballpark where he's pitching half his starts in Citi Field, and he only gave up 8 home runs last year when he pitched in Pittsburgh. That is hitter friendly. So again, would I would have been okay with Walker? Absolutely. I think Walker's a good pitcher. I think he's solid in the middle of the rotation. Again, he was on number 4 last year after Bassett. That's not a bad number 4 at all. Especially if you have, like I said, how many number 4 and number 5 starters are going to have ERA under 4? Not many. And again, if you're going to pitch in a smaller ballpark in half your starts, there's a pretty good chance that those warning track fly balls that didn't go out at Citi Field will go out at Citizens Bank Park. His ERA is going to be closer to 4 than it is last year. No, I'm not demonizing at all. I was just trying to make the point that Walker would be a better Met than he is a Philly. That's the point I was trying to make. Quintana's a veteran. He pitches every 5th day, and I don't have no problem with Quintana. Again, I think you could have went either way with Walker. Listen, if the Mets didn't get Senga, would I mind Walker coming back? Yeah, because you got the known pitchers, right? If you would have Quintana and Walker in this, nobody can say that Jose Quintana and Kodai Senga is a better duo than Jose Quintana and Taijuan Walker because we don't know what Senga is. Senga could be terrible and be worse than Walker. And then that duo with Walker and Quintana would have been better. But we just don't know. And, well, yeah, okay, that's fine. But, again, he didn't pitch with Molina all year. He was in PNC Park with a garbage team. So he pitched more games with Pittsburgh than he did with St. Louis. Right? Let me see. He pitched 20 with Pittsburgh and 12 with St. Louis. Now, he did have a much better ERA with St. Louis. But, I'm sorry. Let's see. Let me just check. I think I'm lying on that part. Let me see. Yeah, he had a very much better ERA with the Cardinals. So that's a good point, Ramon. That's an excellent point. But is that all just catching? Yeah, it could be. But it's not like it's not like he's going to a catcher that is, I don't think McCann's going to be here. I think Nito's perfectly fine. Again, we don't need Quintana as our number 3, possibly number 4 starter. Let me just check something really quick. I just want to see something. I'm looking at Chris Bassett really quick. I just want to make sure I'm saying something right before I say something wrong. All right, so we had a 3.42 ERA, Chris Bassett, right? So if Jose Quintana has a 3.5 ERA, similar to Bassett, that's basically what you need as your number 3 starter, right? You need somebody like Chris Bassett is and what Quintana is. That guy in the middle of your rotation needs to be a bulldog, a guy that needs to give you those extra innings to save your bullpen for your 1-2 starters, just in case that they, you got to save their innings a little bit, and your 4 or 5 starters that you don't project to go far into games, right? He's your guy that you need innings from. You need the guy to throw 110 pitches if you need to. Bassett was that guy. Quintana, looking at his totals here with his pitches, he pitched a lot of games where he threw 95 to 100 pitches almost every game. Exactly my point. You know what I'm saying? And that's the whole point. So is the Mets rotation better? You can make the argument, yes. Could they be worse? You can make that argument, yes, as well. But the problem with the rotation with the Mets right now is not about Quintana, Verlander, Scherzer. It's about Senga. If Senga is anywhere near what he was in Japan, even if he don't pitch to an under 2 ERA, say if he pitches to a 2.70 ERA, well, your third starter is automatically better than what you had in Chris Bassett, automatically. Even if you pitch to a 3 ERA, you're still having something better. Again, if Sanger is the I guess you could say the factor, the I don't know, I'm trying to think of a word here, guys. That makes sense. If Senga is he's the big question mark, right? That can go either way. Again, if he has a 4 ERA, well, the Mets rotation is probably going to not be as good. But then again, if Quintana is as good as he was last year, or even somewhat what he's good last year, wild card. Thank you. I was thinking that, and it didn't make sense in my head, but that makes sense. Senga is the wild card. It can make this rotation go to another level, even better than last year, or it can be status quo, similar to last year, which I think we'll be fine with. But again, we go through this process with the rotation. Yes, pitching is important, but you also got to score runs. You can't rely on your pitching staff putting up zeros every game. And a lot last year, in the middle of August until the end of September, the Mets put too much pressure on the pitching staff. Every time they had to put up zeros to win ball games. That's not necessarily what you can make happen again. You got to score runs. And that's why the lineup was so much of a major issue. You couldn't blame the rotation when this rotation basically carried you the entire year, except for the last couple of games of the season. It's not fair to kill the rotation when the offense basically was a no-show for a month and a half where you needed your pitcher to put up zeros to win ball games. Not fair at all. And it comes down to the fact, will the Mets do something more with the lineup? And we're going to end it on this note, guys. Are the Mets going to pick up another bat? I think it's almost 100% chance of yes. It's just a matter of who. Is it the big bat in Carlos Correa? Is it the mid-level bat, Duvall, Drury, Mancini, Martinez? Yeah, John, I don't see that necessarily happen yet. Look, I see it this way. Could this be a possibility at the trade deadline with Devers? Yes, absolutely. Because if Escobar is struggling and Beatty has not found his self in Major League Baseball yet, and he's not the guy that we think yet, maybe the Mets might go to the Rafael Devers. I think he's 2 years older than Brett Beatty. You're probably going to have to trade Beatty in that deal to get Devers, and God knows who else. But, you're getting this guy in a rental and only in a half a year. So he might not cost as much then than he would now. So would I give Escobar and Beatty a first half to see what they bring? Absolutely. And especially if you bring another bat like Mancini, Martinez, Duvall, Drury, or possibly Correa, now you don't have to really worry about the third base situation too much, right? But now you have options to do with Beatty, like I talked about last stream, putting Beatty in left field, which he's comfortable doing since he played a lot of left field in the minor leagues. So that's an opposition as well. So that's a situation that we can look at as well going forward. So the things to watch out for over the next couple of days. Obviously, the Correa watch is something that, there was some speculation that Correa is going to make a decision by Friday. That hasn't really been confirmed, but there was some speculation of that situation. So maybe I'll do a live stream about like a Correa watch on Friday, maybe if the rumors get a little bit stronger towards Friday. Jurickson Profar is a similar option. Honestly, that's not a bad idea for like a fourth outfielder. He could play many positions in the outfield. That's an option as well. So look for the Carlos Carrasco trade market to heat up a little bit more. We'll see what the Mets do. Either they let the team that they trade him to pick up either the whole contract, the $14 million, or pay half. That's probably going to determine what the Mets are going to use or what they're going to do going forward. Clearly, if they trade Carrasco, it's probably going to be either McGill or Peterson fight it out for this fifth spot in spring training. Look for that. Look for the Mets to start looking at bullpen guys a little bit more. You're going to hear rumors about Chafin, that's looking for a multi-year deal. Ottavino, who's looking for a 2-year deal. Look for the Mets to be very much in on those two guys. Correa, I would not be surprised. You're going to hear rumblings, especially with the teams that might be involved and might actually be out of Correa now that could afford Correa. Don't think for a second that the Mets are just necessarily out. Because if Swanson goes to the Giants, which has been speculated now, because he is going to be cheaper than Correa. The Giants might be in on Swanson more than Correa. That means the Cubs, who don't seem like they want to give that type of money to anybody, they haven't been spending big money. So that there's no guarantee that Correa is going to go there. Correa might actually fall into the Mets' lap. And that's a big possibility, and don't make anybody tell you otherwise. Don't listen to Andy Martino saying there's no shot, because he said exactly that again with Scherzer, and that was a week prior to what Andy Martino said, and the Mets got Scherzer. So again, his reporting might be right, and the Mets are not in on Correa, but there's no reason why the Mets shouldn't be in on Correa, especially with the big bat they still need in that lineup. So what are we looking for over the next couple of days? The possibility of Carlos Carrasco getting traded. Bullpen arms, Chafin, Ottavino, possibly other arms as well on the trade market. The lineup, what does it need? A big bat. Mancini, Martinez, Drury, Duvall. Those type of guys we're looking at as well. Possibly Michael Conforto. So those are the points there, guys. Carrasco, bullpen, Correa, possible options. That could be backup first baseman, backup DH, guys that can hit 20 to 25 home runs. So look for all that going forward over the next couple of days. There might not be a live stream tomorrow. I might be a little bit too busy to do a live stream. But again, if something breaks with the Mets, something big or even something small, maybe like bullpen help or DH or another bat that might not be Correa, I'll pop on live with breaking news. Other than that, guys, I want to thank you guys for tuning in for about an hour and 20 minutes on Mets Hot Stove Live. And before I go, I want to let you guys know I'm talking to some people that are interested in doing a show, a Mets weekly show every week. Probably, I'm thinking around probably after Christmas. I'm talking to a couple of people now regarding that. A couple of people that I know from the 7 Line, a couple of people that I just know from YouTube that I'm talking to right now to get about 3 or 4 people together to have like a Mets Talk weekly or a Mets Talk Live with a couple of people once a week to go over the Mets final roster and throughout the season as well. So we're going to be looking at that. I'm going to be we're working on that right now. I've been talking to them today, a couple of people. So very, very soon. I think it's important just to get other opinions on this show or on this channel just to move it along, because obviously you get in my opinions only, and to have different perspectives, like I had hit on yesterday, we didn't agree on everything, and it became a conversation starter, and we ended up being on for 2 hours. So that's something that we can talk about, that we can go forward in with this channel. Again, to expand the channel, you need other ideas. You need people that just doesn't have necessarily your same idea or opinion. So we have conversation starters, and it'll make the chat a lot more fun as well. So once I get things started, I'm going to have the people on, by themselves. Each one of them, when I decide if it's 2 people or 3 people, I'm going to have them on individually to introduce themselves, where we know each other from, and go into their story about being a Mets fan and all that other stuff. So once that gets all finalized, I will have each and every one of them on the channel during one of these Mets Hot Stoves or Mets Talk Live or whatever, to have you guys answer questions, give them questions, and you can get familiar with them as well. So with that said, guys, thank you for tuning in to Mets Hot Stove Live. Once again, another successful live stream because of you guys. Before you go, guys, don't forget to please hit on that like button if you haven't as of yet. And once again, guys, if you got social media pages, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, make sure you share this stream or share the channel and people that you may know that are Mets fans that might be looking for content like this. Bring them over. Let them say what's up. Maybe they do like the channel. Again, this is always a lot of fun. So let's get this channel even bigger, right? We got to 4,000 subscribers. Now we're going to head to 5,000 subscribers. And I want to thank you guys again. So I'll see you guys next time. Hopefully we get some good news regarding the Mets on possible signings, possible trades going forward over the next couple of days. So if I don't see you tomorrow, guys, I'll see you on Thursday for another Mets Hot Stove Live. Everybody have a good night. Let's go Mets. See you next time, guys.
Shea Stadium, the big story, Mets.
Come on! Let's go! Teamwork to make the dream work. Let's go. Let's go. We're gonna make it this time. We're gonna